Welcome back to the final set of reviews for the final set of reveals that were released during the weekend. It was Gwent Open number 2 for Season 2. I had a great time casting with Shinmiri, and it was a great set of games. If you haven't been spoiled, or if you just want to see a great tournament with a varied set of deck lists, you can check it all out on YouTube. The Gwent channel has basically the full days uninterrupted. You can also go on to Twitch. Check the VODs at twitch.tv/cdprojectred. But it was a great time. Once again, it was around the world to your home. The final game alone had connections from Seattle, Toronto, Warsaw, China. I'm not exactly sure what city Wong ID was playing from. And Russia. Again, I'm not sure what the city was. But Poland, Russia, Canada, the US on separate coasts, and China. All the way around the world into your home. And, you know, I think things went pretty well. There were slight hiccups. Both days, the final game that Shinmiri and I cast were a little hard to see. So the commentary got a little sparse, I think. At least on my end. I definitely felt like I wasn't talking very much at the end. But it just had to do with the length of time. It's something that we can fix in the future for sure, but there is that. And also we dropped at one point, and Panda picked us up, but I think it was almost seamless. He was so good. I watched it, and I actually liked the tournament so much that I watched almost all of it. Like, I usually rewatch some of my stuff, but sometimes, like, on the sets that I don't cast, I don't necessarily watch it, but I had to see some of these decks. Like, the decks were so good. Neverhood's lists were great. Red Raim's list, obviously great. Red Raim played in the bottom half of the semis. I couldn't cast that, so I watched all 6 games of that. Man, it was a great tournament. I just wanted to say that much. Thanks for at least listening that far. But we can get into this review because during the Gwent Open, our good friends, Paul and Jason, well, they went through our final card reveals, and they also talked about some of the changes, and we're going to talk about that stuff too because we got the patch notes today, Monday, the 29th, at the time of this recording. It's like 14 hours, perhaps, until we get our hands on the expansion. Not too bad. So, the final cards, the big things that they held back. Let me know in the comments, do you think that they were worth holding back? Overall, if I had to rank this group of cards, I'd say some of the spiciest ones are among them for some of the factions. And that includes Syndicate. Started off with a huge bomb. 11 provision, 3 strength, Firesworn with 2 armor. This is Ulrich. He has Intimidate, so he's growing every time you play a crime. And on deploy, you spawn and play a base copy of a bronze Firesworn unit from your hand. And if you have no neutral cards in your hand, thus qualifying for devotion, you can boost that unit by 2. So the cycle of Adalia Ramon continues in its own way, and I think that for a Swarm archetype, this card does make sense in this way. And I think that Jason was right. This kind of card does create a lot of interesting play patterns. And the way that this is used, whereas Ramon always needs a soldier, Ulrich always needs a Firesworn unit, so you can't copy something like a townsfolk, let's say. But you wouldn't want to do that because Fallen Knight has been added to the game. So people are talking like this card is extremely strong, and I am inclined to believe them. I think that the value you get from this card is much higher than Adalia because Ulrich himself is an engine. However, and I think that the devotion drawback is just not that large for Syndicate because they were already very much interested in playing their own faction cards. And this is clearly shown here in Ulrich because he's an Intimidate engine. Only Intimidate engines care about faction cards. Intimidate engines. What I was trying to say. Intimidate engines only care about faction cards because only faction cards are crimes. There is hardly a drawback to this card and hardly a drawback to running Devotion in a faction that has a pretty versatile Purify in Kalkstein. And perhaps a world where you just don't care about killing that scenario anymore. Scenarios are going to have a second boost, though, because there's going to be less heavers in the game. There's just going to be a larger percentage of decks that don't even consider running heavers because they want to play cards like Ulrich and they want to crush. This card is very, very good. The Sad Knight will give a lot of happiness to many players. This is the card you need to always be aware of. I think where Adalia and Ramon are annoying, Ulrich is build around me. Very, very good. Ramon and Adalia, very good round 1 cards, very good push cards. Ulrich just seems good all the time because he himself is an engine. If Adalia had like a resupply, this wouldn't look so egregious. I just don't think the budget's quite the same. But we shall see. We shall see. This card's very, 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 very good. 5 stars if I had to start ranking them. 5 stars. Monsters. We got 2 new monsters cards to look at. The first one is this one. This is the Patience unit, as I have gotten into calling them. But we heard on the developer stream that there is no interest in making a keyword that describes this particular ability, because the idea is that if you didn't know what Patience did, it would just require even more reading. Also, it seems like the mechanic is not yet so beloved that they'd be looking to re-explore it. But hey, Formation was loved, and they re-explored that, so we'll see. The Aparian Phantom is a 7 provision, 4 strength, wild hunt beast, I believe, with 1 armor. Has Veil, as many of these units do in this cycle. With Zeal, on order, damage an enemy unit by 3. But at the end of your turn, if you haven't used that order, boost self by 1. I think this card is very good for its cost. All of these cards that function as engines at 7 with a secondary mechanic, it requires your immediate attention, not just because this thing can, like, an order of 3 damage gives you so much reach. It means that your Alzur's Thunder or similar spell that does 5 damage now can assist you in killing something up to 8. So you want to move this guy, maybe for that reason alone, because this is a very strong order to have protected like this is. It is itself not protected from the aforementioned Thunder, but you're likely going to be wanting to run removal because these cards are going to be rampant. But I will say that something I wanted to touch on, if you hadn't considered this yet yourself, Muzzle is going to be an exceptionally strong card if you expect to see any of these cards in the meta, because this will seize the unit and it won't lock it. So you get to benefit from the ability, take it from your opponent, and develop your own engine. The worst one of these units to do this with is the Scoia'tael unit, because somehow Scoia'tael dodged another drawback. They only care about boosting Scoia'tael cards in hand. So if you were to muzzle it and outplay Scoia'tael, it might as well be locked unless you yourself are playing Scoia'tael. However, the other ones are all amazing because they don't lock. So I am pretty sure I'm playing Muzzle in some decks. I just think Devotion might be for suckers. What's going on, Pumpkin? Thanks so much for the big host. But you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? You muzzle these Veil cards and they don't lock. Unless I am misunderstanding the interaction with Veil and targeting. But it won't lock, right? I think it's going to work, and I think Devotion might be for suckers, because All God looks pretty good. And this card, on its own, though, I'm just saying that a protected engine that has this kind of reach makes it really hard to develop any sort of board against it. and the fact that it's also an engine when you don't use it, you are encouraged to play it earlier. You're encouraged to set up, so you're just kind of encouraged to play it in the most threatening way you can, early. Protect it. So I like it. But it's not nearly as interesting as this card. No. The Winter Queen. 8 provisions for a 4-strength Wild Hunt elf that has Thrive if you have no neutral cards in your deck. Again, making sure you are hitting that condition for devotion. At the end of your turn, if there is frost on both opponents' rows, summon this unit from your deck to the ranged row. So you know where she's going. That's one thing about this card. But for her cost, this is quite good. This is quite good. It doesn't need the Thrive to be quite good because there's a lot of cards that are applying multiple rows of frost at the bronze level. So, I mean, getting this card out, it's even easier than Eiler, and it can happen instantly. But if you are brave enough to skip all the neutrals, you actually get a Thrive engine with frost on both enemy rows if you play that at once. That's 3 engines developed at once. I don't think I have to play it to know that's good. It's going to be hard to combat. That's why I think that because just generally monsters are very popular, if you want to remove this card, be ready for it. 4 isn't that hard to kill, so she dies to all sorts of bronze removal. And if it's protected, it's not likely to thrive that much. So you will probably, if you think you're going to see a lot of monsters, you're just going to have to run your natural selections. You're going to have to run your jousts. You're going to have to run your... Oh, Northern Realms. Well, you know what I mean. But I think this card is obviously fantastic. Made an archetype that I saw with a lot of potential just in what they're able to do in round 1. Locking down, like freezing the board in round 1. Monsters has a lot of ways to do some crazy stuff in round 3. But they've always been very happy with easy ways to win round 1. The Vampire Core has done it for a long time. When the bronzes work really well, and they have been for monsters like the Andraga larva. So more Thrives, more Thrive engines for monsters. I think this is really good. And I think that Frost is going to be pretty playable. I think there might be enough counterplay, even with the removal of Weather Clear, because armor has already made its presence known, and there doesn't seem to be a lack of it even now. So we will ultimately see, but this is a huge help. A huge help. Scoia'tael Drummond. The last Skellige card to be shown. Another devotion card, meaning that Scoia'tael has veteran if you do not have any neutral cards, which means in round 3, Scoia'tael is a 5-strength unit that deals 5 damage. 5 damage on a body is great. But because it's a Skellige unit, you could realistically play this twice because of the graveyard interaction that you have to use. But it's also important to note, I think where this guy really carries is that for his stats, his stats for his provision cost are just very good. Maybe not a great round 1 superstar, but at least by round 2, as good as Enraged Ifrit at 2 provisions less. And then by round 3, an incredibly high value card. Now, it doesn't... Once it's in your deck and the game has started, it doesn't really matter. But I think that if you're able to include a card like this that can offer you at least the 4-point removal ping by round 2, where you might be considering to bleed, or you might be getting bled. This is a nice little turnaround that you can play later as well, and it's even stronger when you play it later. I don't know if it's going to drive the devotion archetype, but this is particularly a good card with Herald. I need to just double check Herald's ability. But I kind of want to look at the late game scenario. No, this is what I want. Ah, they're all filled. So the last card here was the Dunny token. Or the Dunny alternate art. That was the last card. Makes sense. Bronze Warrior. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just making sure it's a Bronze Warrior. So, okay. So there's the reason where this guy maybe falls a little short is that if you were to use a res on this, you're not using it on something else that could be a little bit more impactful, that could be a little higher provisions to get you a bit more value. But I think where this guy really excels is that from round 2 onward, he's definitely good. No question about it. And he's not taking up a lot of space. You could play him in round 1, not be too sad about it. Again, once the game starts, you got to do what you got to do. But the longer you hold on to it, this also could encourage just, a much more passive Skellige in round 1. Veteran does encourage that. I'm stronger and stronger the more the game goes on, but you do want to get value out of your cards, and to do that, you do need to play them. So in round 1, if you're running like a deck, even when it's passive, you don't want to hold all your bronze cards until the end. You want to play your gold cards too. So your bronze cards with Devotion and Veteran and stuff like this, so your bronze cards with Veteran, I'm not so sure. Like, I feel like the 4-point card, what is it, the Invader? It is the Invader, and I'm trying to find it now. Just look for the Severed Head. Nope, that's too many. So the Invader in this situation is an example of a card that clearly looks like, hey, 7 for 4, that's not bad. But at the same time, when it's a 7 for 4, do I really want a bronze card in my hand? So I feel like for the most part, Veteran is just there to improve your worst draws at the end of the game, if that's when it comes to the bronze cards. And when it comes to Scoia'tael, I mean, he's just not that exciting when you play him in round 1. It's always base power. You can't rig this. So I think that like all the veteran cards, the amount of value that you're able to secure in round 1, it's going to encourage a certain type of play, perhaps a more passive play, or I guess a more amount of pressure that can be committed in round 1 that doesn't lose steam necessarily in round 3, or can push extremely hard in round 2 that always ensures that it has high value draws even when the opponent is also drawing bronzes. I can see it coming together in some situations where it's just so hard to bleed them and their draws in their top decks are always at least 7 points. I believe in it because I've seen it before. But it has to be a meta that can afford to have the chance to draw lower value cards in round 1. I think that I'm most interested to see how Skellige develops because on paper it doesn't look as clear. But I really like this card. And I think that its provision level is very good. Ildiko, or Ildiko, I'm not quite sure. But she is a mage, and she has dark powers, and I think there's a big story centered around that necklace itself. But Ildiko, she's a nefarious creature, but she definitely likes to support her king. And here we see a fairly above, this is a card that you can get pretty good value for, considering that she technically doesn't have a ceiling. And she does have a pretty good benefit for playing early. I think that Northern Realms is going to see a good amount of support for engine-based gameplay. And usually, to really support that, you don't want to have too many engines, because then you have cards that you have to play late. If your whole deck is engines, you still have to play cards later in the round. Things start to lose value. So the best supportive cards for engines are extremely strong supportive cards like Ildiko. Now, Ildiko does have a huge drawback in that she is very much like Damien, like Skellen. She's a card that can be removed with a Thunder. So she is what could be classified as a bear. However, what she also is, much like those cards, is worth protecting. Because not only do you get to boost the allied unit by 5, which is a non-trivial amount, but she also has the second layer, which the fact that she is an order unit, she does have the chance to refresh orders. You would want to play her in a deck that cares about orders because she gives units zeal. Because she has an order, you'd be more interested in playing it with Veraxis, who refreshes the order. So I can definitely see, you can clearly see like how much this matters to Northern Realms. And this effect, giving any unit zeal, this effect has been in the game before. To be honest, I'm glad it's back without just taking another card out of the game and reworking it into a card we already have. This is a nice take on it because there's more to it. There's much, much more to it. In fact, there's a whole other ability added to it. It's not just a body with an effect. Kill it, solve the problem. Should Ildiko herself get zeal, she's at least playing for 10, which is a lot. Sometimes you'll play Falibor for that and you'll be like, whew, at least it was worth 10, even though I couldn't really get that value, get that great removal. At least it was 10. Ildiko is at least 10 at 9 provisions. That's okay. That's pretty decent. And then there's all these extra layers on top of it. So the value proposition, I'm on board with it. The inspired effect, considering that you're probably, I honestly, truly believe in Inspired Zeal. I think it's going to see play because I'm going to play the fuck out of it. And I think that this is a card, realistically, that is in Seltkirk or in Says or whatever, that I would say, you know what? If I have to use a Zeal right now, if I had to use a Leader Charge right now, at least I'm getting a 12-point play that has massive amounts of future benefit to me, and I just protected that engine that's going to give me this. So if you look at this card in a way like you would look at Morale, where this card is played and it represents points if you don't answer it, but it also represents reach if you try to play against it. This 7 strength card now enhances potentially any other card I'll play. Every card I play helps me further solidify the round without spending a leader charge, if that's my game. And I think that's what Northern Realms will have to build around. And I think that this card will certainly have a home. It'll certainly have a home. Now, because it's a 9 provision card, you cannot Amphibious Assault this card and get the Inspired benefit. But I really think that it's more about using Inspired Zeal on this card and just getting a very, very difficult situation. Remove 7. You can't just de-row her. You have to lock her, and that's probably a lot slower than the 12. Like, you're playing 12 when you put this option to your opponent. You're playing 12 points. So I just think that that's not nothing. It's going to be strong enough. It's going to be able to fight against some of this crazy tempo that we're seeing. And I think maybe if we're able to develop an Avalanche-style Northern Realms with the new... I'm not going to say buff Temerian Drummer, but the new Temerian Drummer with Amphibious Assault and what that's able to do, if you're able to get it on an engine, get a boost on Anna, get a Drummer out, and now you've got all these passive points with massive amounts of protection, perhaps, due to Ildiko, due to Armorer's Workshop. I don't know, man. I think Northern Realms will be able to set up passive points. It's going to be so hard to pass on them. And when they pass on you, it's going to be really hard to overtake. I think we're coming back into a world where Avalanche is going to be a premier deck. And the last time that was, shit, it might have been the first Gwent Open. It might have been, well, way before Homecoming. I like it. I think this card is actually very, very good. Hamadryad. Now we got to see two Scoia'tael cards. This card is the only bronze card that we got to see, but it is an amazing card, this Hamadryad. So this is a 5 provision, 4 strength Dryad with Symbiosis. At the end of your turn, if this unit has Vitality, boost self by 1. So not only does this card double dip on Vitality, when you play a nature card, it also creates a treant equal to the amount of units you have that have the Symbiosis keyword. So if you were just to play this naked on the board and then play Dryad's Caress, and assuming all of it procs, let's say those are the only 2 cards you played, and you passed. The total, the total amount, so that's 7 points plus the additional 6 points from the Vitality. So we're up to 13 points plus the single treant. Those 2 cards alone, 14 points for 9 provisions. And those are bronze cards. Like, it's good. It's just a really, you can see a very, very safe package here. And you have to deal with this card because if you don't kill the Hamadryad, the benefit is that the more you protect it, the more it protects itself. And you're encouraged to protect it because she gives you that extra benefit as well. And yeah, it plays into tall removal, but playing a 5p bronze is just, you know, oh well. Please do. The art is fantastic. More squirrels, please. We don't have brown squirrels in Canada. Sorry. In Ontario. Maybe I'll just say in my neighborhood. We don't have brown squirrels. We have black squirrels. And we have some gray squirrels. Gray squirrels mostly native to Montreal. But we don't see brown squirrels very often. The artwork is awesome. They grow their own homes. So she's growing into a tree. She's been there for a long time. Awesome card. Really just opens up all sorts of stuff. I think that the engine ability between the vitality that you're going to give this, the bleeding that the oak critters are going to drop on you, I think Scoia'tael is going to have a lot of power in the bronze side of their decks, like just tons and tons of power. And of course their devotion is going to be easy to play into. So there's that too. FreezeNet or Frex Zenit. Sure. I'm not 100%, but that's what YouTube comments are for. This card is very good. The card is depicting the male human in this art. 8 provision, 5 strength human. On deploy, if you hit him if you drop him in the melee row, he boosts a dryad in your hand by 2. And if you play him in the ranged row, he spawns a young dryad in the row. And if you need a reminder, the young dryad is the new token for Scoia'tael. It is a 2 strength symbiosis unit. So it adds more symbiosis on the board, beefier and beefier trees whenever you play your nature cards. And if you play this in a devotion deck, you know, if you didn't know, Scoia'tael sometimes likes to run all Scoia'tael cards. You get both abilities. So 2 carryover, 5 strength on the board. Sorry, 7 strength on the board. And a little bit more support for amazing cards like the Hamadryad. I would say that this card does not need the symbiosis to justify her cost. She's very good. I just can't talk enough about how good this card is. FreezeNet is also obviously amazing. You get a ton of points in this little package here. Seems like a really great mid-range card. Play it whenever you want. Build the points. Build the pick. Like Scoia'tael is going to be able to do hand buff and tempo at a certain point in any round. In the middle of the round, you're going to have to say, how dangerous is Circle of Life going to be for me? It's going to deal 3 damage to me. It's going to proc all the symbiosis, and it's going to make the future rounds of this game miserable because this card and anything else that's doing hand buff, you know, am I going to get hit by just an unbelievable Sheldon Skaggs at the end of this game? Now, that's not a Dryad, so that's a bad example. In fact, I would say that the fact that this only can boost a Dryad is a saving grace for this card. If it couldn't do that, it would be quite something. But there are some cards that want to be boosted up, like the Hamadryad. It's a card that you don't want to die instantly because you get the benefit when it's present. Just a very, very, very good proactive play if I've ever seen one. One of the best proactive plays in the game, I might say. 7-point engine with hand buff. It's just amazing. Scoia'tael got bomb cards. And that leads us to the last card here. the Urchin of Erlenwald, Nilfgaard, 7 provision, 4 strength, beast soldier, cursed knight. Okay. So he's not a soldier. That's important. Nilfgaard loves soldiers. So to make him a soldier, maybe that's too good. Not really sure. But this is an actual very interesting take on the patience card. This was a cool choice. A very cool choice. So this is the Urchin of Erlenwald, a 7 provision, 4 strength, 1 armor, veiled, cursed knight with zeal. On order, transform into Dunny. Now, this is a typo, and it is corrected in the actual game that we're going to get tomorrow. Dunny is correctly spelt with 1 N. And now here is Dunny. Zum, 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 zum. Pretty cool, huh? Dunny is a 7 strength immune knight with 1 armor. Unnecessary armor, but 1 armor. So a 7 strength immune that, as long as he's on the board, at the end of your turn, boost a random allied unit by 1. This card is a very good, another great patience unit. Again, not the official keyword, because there isn't an official keyword. But we can understand that if you just don't use it, if you wait, you get a benefit. But if you need to use it, you can't. The interesting part about this guy is he represents a very, very good short round and long round card. The reason why it's a great long round card is obvious. It is an engine. The longer it stays on the board, the more units it's going to buff. But the reason it's a great short round card is you can't target it, and it represents a lot of points. It is very truly the purest representation of a gold Gwent card. 7 strength, immune. Obviously, you can still weather it, whatever. But what I'm trying to get across is when you're able to play an immune unit that represents a lot of strength, and you are not sacrificing anything to put this in, compare it to Scoia'tael. I did go back to the right scene, right? Compare it to Scoia'tael, which is an 8 strength immune unit that obviously offers harmony benefits and such like that. But an 8 strength immune unit that before there was anything better, it saw play. It was very annoying. You couldn't get rid of it. You couldn't target it. Those points were always represented. And once you were able to represent your immune points, you control from there, because you know if you're able to remove every card that they're able to play from here on, 7 is actually going to be good enough. It might actually be good enough. But it's probably not the only card you're playing in that round. I'm just talking about a weird worst case scenario where you're playing a 7 strength immune unit and you're controlling from there. But this is also a mid-round opportunity. And of course, the long round opportunity, like I said, fairly clear, as it is an engine that comes in protected. And I can't wait to steal with muzzle. All right, so those are all the cards that were revealed.